And Andrew's on.
Hey, late night from Willowdale. We just restarting this because we had to delete some stuff because we're
Running out of space.
we're running out of space. So, late night from Willowdale, Monday, April 29th. And we want to talk about a bunch of things. The Mueller, reflections on Mueller, the Mueller report and Trump, climate change, Biden, U.S.-Israeli relations, and we want to do this in about 12 minutes. So let's get started. As Chris Coma says on CNN, let's get started. So this is where it all began. the day after inauguration. And then it just went nuts. Trump fires Comey amid a Russian inquiry. And then he started then the abandoning of all sorts of international accords, global climate accord, the Iran Pact. You're getting all this, hey, Clint?
Mm-hmm.
And then we get, and then Trump, his love affair with Putin, takes word on Putin's whole dealie on interference. And then he fired Jeff Sessions. And then the Mueller, and then Comey, of course, said Trump tried to sink the inquiry. And then we have the original Mueller investigation report about a month ago. And then, of course, we had Michael Cohen's testimony. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Michael Cohen implicates the president.
Was that all in chronological order?
Yeah, kind of.
Oh, okay.
It's a mix. I'm just showing you. And then, of course, we have the Mueller report. The New York Times headline from 10 days ago on Good Friday. And the Mueller report. So let's get started. We got... Okay, my premise is this. Trump should be impeached. Okay? There's enough... The Mueller report showed so much. Okay. 10 incidents, at least 10 acts of obstruction of justice. You know, from firing of Comey,
To Sessions.
the firing of Sessions, to trying to get Comey to drop the Flynn investigation, to try to get his personal counsel, Don McGahn, to fire Mueller. And then, it just goes on and on in the New York Times. At least 10 acts of obstruction of justice.
Also forging White House documents.
Yeah. And then there's the Russia thing. Yes, Mueller says in the report. No collusion or conspiracy. But Trump assiduously and relentlessly tried to get Russian help to win the election. The Russians hated Hillary Clinton. Putin hated Hillary Clinton. They wanted Donald Trump in power, and Putin said that in Helsinki last summer. They wanted Donald Trump in power, and the Trump and his campaign assiduously and relentlessly pursued, sought Russian help, and the Russians were happy to oblige, and
Well, we've seen it with those 12 indicted Russians, right?
Yeah, right. The Russians were happy to oblige the Trump campaign. They were also involved in nefarious stuff that Trump probably didn't know about, obviously. And we've seen the indictments and everything. But yes, Trump wanted Russian help. They sought it out. They had meetings. Of course, it was Keystone Cops, hapless, stupid stuff. But yeah, no collusion, no conspiracy. But Trump wanted Russian help to defeat Hillary Clinton. And the Russians were more than willing to help because Putin hated Hillary for all the reasons, and we've talked about it before. And then, of course, there's the unethical behavior, the sleazy behavior.
The pussy grabbing?
Yeah, no, that was before, but the coddling of dictators, the love of, the biggest murderer and thug, one of the biggest murderers and thugs on the planet Earth, MBS in Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, Duarte, the love of Bolsonaro in Brazil, and all the thugs and all the dirty little white supremacist thugs in Europe, from Orban in Hungary, and he loves Xi and he loves Putin, and there isn't a dictator, murderer, and thug that Trump doesn't like. And of course, then he's destroying alliances that were built up after the Second World War. Goes after Canada, goes after Germany, goes after France, goes after everybody. But he loves murderers and dictators, and so I mean, really, then there's the deregulation, which is destroying the environmental deregulation, and all the deregulations that are going on in the U.S. Just basically destroying the environment in the U.S. Like talk about climate change. He's just going after everything, anything to help rich people. And then recently, in front of the NRA, says that Trump, and they got out of the Iran nuclear deal, which is really important. Got out of the Paris Climate Accords, which I am pretty cynical about. But the Iran nuclear deal was key, and he and this irrational attacks on Iran, like just nutty. And then of course, his craziness in terms of Israel and his coddling to Netanyahu and putting the embassy in Jerusalem and agreeing,
the Golan Heights,
the Golan Heights annexation, saying Israel has every right to annex the Golan Heights, and apparently now they're going to put a settlement in Trump's name. But we'll go back to Israel in a moment. Now Trump also wants to get out of this international arms agreement where you don't sell arms to thugs and murderers. And he announced this in the NRA, and they went nuts at the NRA. Oh, they were clapping and they were cheering, and this is an agreement where you don't sell arms to thugs and murderers. Well, of course, Trump doesn't give a damn about that. So, Trump needs to be impeached, just symbolically. Yeah, of course he's not going to be removed from office. The Senate will never allow it. It's controlled by the Republicans. So he needs to be impeached because the parallels to Nixon are incredible. Obstruction of justice issues in particular. And every constitutional scholar in the United States says, the parallels to the Nixon administration are incredible. And Nixon was never actually impeached. He resigned before that. But the parallels are right on. Obstruction of justice, intimidating, offering pardons, and intimidating staff, you name it, right? We know it. So, So that brings me to, that brings me to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was impeached over a blowjob, okay? If I can say that on YouTube, but I think I can because they say it on CNN. He was impeached over a non-criminal act. He was impeached over a consensual act of sex, a consensual sexual act. He was impeached over having sex with a young intern who was of age, Monica Lewinsky. He was impeached because he had a consensual sex act. And the only reason he was impeached because he lied about it. Okay? So that was obstruction of justice. He lied about it. But that's it. That's it. He lied about a consensual sex act with a young adult. Okay? Bill Clinton was impeached over oral sex. Okay? It's so pathetic, it's beyond the pale. Okay? That's why Bill Clinton's approval ratings were crazy after he was impeached. He was acquitted by the Senate, and he continued to serve as president. And his approval ratings went up. And Democrats did very well in those midterm elections in 1998. His approval ratings went down subsequently after that, but he's still sustained above 50%. Donald Trump's approval ratings are low. And if he's impeached, they'll probably even go lower. He's not going to have the rebound Bill Clinton did, because a lot of people can't stand Donald Trump. And his base is there for him, but it's not beyond that. Bill Clinton had a wider base, and a lot of people thought it was silly that he was impeached. First, the special counsel looked a stupid real estate deal, Whitewater, and then expanded into Monica Lewinsky and blah blah blah. And a lot of Americans were repulsed by this. What, like, really? Impeached over a blowjob? Really? And that's why Bill Clinton's acquitted by the Senate and went on to have a successful presidency. Andrew Johnson, who is considered the worst president of the United States until Donald Trump. Andrew Johnson, who is ironically was Lincoln's vice president. Lincoln's considered the best president of the United States by most historical scholars. And Andrew Johnson, who is Lincoln's vice president, is considered the worst president of the United States. Now, obviously, Andrew Johnson succeeded Lincoln when Lincoln was assassinated, and Andrew Johnson was impeached. But he was impeached again for something stupid, like he fired the Secretary of State. But Andrew Johnson was a horrible president. He brought back the reasons Lincoln selected him are reasons. I don't want to get into it. This video, I don't want to go. But Johnson turned out to be a horrible president. He wanted to bring back basically segregation and Jim Crow. He brought back Jim Crow. The Reconstruction was a disaster. Johnson was a racist, and he wanted to basically bring back all the pro-slavery stuff that the Union had just defeated the Confederacy over. Because of Johnson, we got, Jim Crow, segregation, and the rest is history. Johnson was a disaster. He was impeached over a technicality, though. But he's considered the worst president of the United States until Donald Trump. But he was impeached over a small matter. Not that he was a horrible person and a racist and tried to bring back racism and segregation and all sorts of things after Lincoln was assassinated. The ironies there are just too rich. And okay, let's move on to climate change. We talked about Mueller. Trump should be impeached. Symbolically, the Democrats will recover from that. I don't think they'll suffer in 2020. If we're talking about the Democrats, let's talk about Biden. Biden's interesting, but Biden. Charles Blow said in the New York Times today, Biden is appealing to the same white racists that voted for Trump. He has this campaign, we're going to bring all the white racists, and the so-called white working class, and, the union types. These are all people that went for Trump for lots of reasons. And, but, these are Trumpites. And, why is he going after the same sort of racist, sort of white working class group of people who didn't want a woman president? Love what Trump was saying, hate immigrants. Biden's going after these people? Really? Charles Blow is right. Maybe it's time for, I see Biden's appeal, I get it. But to go after the same white working class racists, and they are racist, the basket of deplorables that Hillary so articulately said, that voted for Trump, and now he's trying to win them. And they were always in the Democratic Party, and then they decided to go for Trump because they hated Hillary for all sorts of reasons, partly because she was a woman. And Biden is trying to win these people back. Maybe it's time. It's true. Like, it's time for the Democrats to go after their base, which is immigrants, Hispanics, black people, progressive whites. Forget these crazy, nutty people that show up at Trump rallies and might vote for Biden, but they'd probably go back to Trump. I'm sorry. Okay. Climate change. A lot of flooding going on. In the Ottawa Valley, in Montreal, in the Muskoka region of Ontario. Everyone links it to the climate change. But no weather event can be linked to climate change. Everyone says that. And have a glass of wine here.
Could you repeat that?
No particular weather event can be linked to climate change. It rains in April, and we've had a lot of rain in April, and well, it was snowing earlier today. And I agree with Donald Trump. Bring me that global warming. I'm kidding, but look, it floods. And the tragedy of all this flooding that goes on in the Montreal area, parts of Quebec, the Ottawa Valley, parts of the Muskoka region is zoning. Why are people building homes in flood-prone areas? Come on, I agree. It's time to stop building homes in floodplains. Really, it rains. There's snowpacks. Yes, we got a lot of snow this winter, but it's not. We didn't get an historic amount of snow. Come on, don't. Yes, climate change and flooding are related. I get it. But I don't think this one particular crisis that we're going through right now in parts of Canada is linked to climate change. This is linked to the fact we got a lot of snow and we're getting a lot of rain. We're not getting biblical, historic amounts of either. So let's not link everything to climate change. Climate change is happening. I'm not a denier. And that brings me to the final minute of this thing. I don't think that a lot of these climate change environmentalists, climate change activists, environmentalists, they're hypocrites. And I don't like the fact that they say, okay, if you support oil sands development or support this pipeline or that pipeline, you're immediately a climate change denier. Or if you don't support the carbon tax, you're a climate change denier. Scott Moe, the Premier of Saskatchewan, was on Question Period, CTV's Question Period on Sunday morning, and he was saying, I'm not a climate change denier. I know what's happening. Saskatchewan is affected by climate change, but I don't like the carbon tax. I don't think that's a good way to do it. Environmentalists shouldn't attack everybody who disagrees with certain, environmental, what the environmental movement wants as climate change deniers. If you support a couple of pipelines, doesn't make you a climate change denier. Just, you're a realist. It's important to get oil to Tidewater. So if you support, a couple of pipelines, particularly TMX, which is just twinning one existing pipeline to Burnaby, British Columbia, you're not a climate change denier. It's just supporting economic activity, and you need to, that oil's a big part of Canada's economy. I'm sorry, oil will still be, bitumen and oil, we will still need them in the near future. I agree that eventually it'll be phased out. But yeah, it doesn't make you a climate change denier. And climate change activists, a lot of them are hypocrites, okay? They live in big homes, they drive cars, they travel constantly. I don't think I've ever met an environmentalist who didn't live in a nice big home and drive an SUV or a car, or didn't travel constantly, or the hypocrisy. I mean, here I live in a housing co-op, but here in Forest Hill, there's people who were complaining about, by Castle Loma, one of the wealthiest areas of Canada, and people had signs on, no to Line 9, or no to this pipeline, no to that pipeline, and they had 3 SUVs in their driveway. I mean, come on. It's the same people in Hyde Park who have lawn signs saying no to jets from Pearson, no to jets from Pearson. How do these people fly anywhere? These are people who live in $3 million homes in Hyde Park and have homes in Cancun and the Barbados. And how do you get to your third or second or third homes? I mean, the NIMBY is the stupidity of it. And then, of course, there's Al Gore. Al Gore, the poster child of environmental hypocrisy. He lives in a home in Nashville. I think it's bigger than the Rogers Center. He says, I have solar power units on the, whatever, Al Gore. Flies around in his corporate jet, preaching, the inconvenient truth. The inconvenient truth of Al Gore is that he's a bloody hypocrite. He doesn't give a damn about climate change. He cares about Al Gore and his money and what he makes. And these guys, David Suzuki is another one, a real creepoid. I'm sorry. Climate change activists tend to be the biggest hypocrites. They live in big homes, they drive, they fly everywhere. I live in this small bachelor apartment. I take public transit. I live in a housing co-op with solar power units on it. I like pipelines. And by the way, I was happy that the Green Party did very well in Prince Edward Island. I hope they would have formed government. I'm voting Green in the fall. I'll vote for Elizabeth May. I disagree with the Greens on some things, but I like them. They're intelligent people. And then that just brings me up to the other stupid thing. And then we'll end this next. We're running out of time. U.S. is real policy. Okay, the New York Times International published this nasty cartoon of a nasty cartoon where Trump was Netanyahu's poodle. Israel basically dictates American policy in the Middle East, and Trump was Netanyahu's poodle. And it was nasty, it was crude, and it was considered by many as anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic. I saw a brief glimpse of it on CNN. It was crude and nasty, and I could see why people saw it as anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish. Anti-Semitism is an odd word because a lot of Arab peoples are Semitic too. So, but yeah, in a time where there are a lot of attacks, obviously we saw it in California and of course in Pittsburgh, a lot of attacks on synagogues. People are very sensitive to anything that could be seen as anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic. But I thought, unfortunately, the cartoon, crude and nasty and obviously should not have been published. U.S. policy in the Middle East is kind of dictated by Israel. And it's lots of books. There are books written about this, and Israel punches beyond its weight in foreign affairs, and it certainly has undue influence on the United States when it comes to foreign policy in the Middle East. And this predates Trump. Okay, this goes back many years, decades, and it's not a good influence. This hatred. Israel stokes up this hatred towards Iran. Israel cozies to Saudi Arabia, so we call it Saudi Israelia. Israel is not a positive influence on U.S. foreign policy, particularly when it comes to the Middle East. So, yeah, that cartoon was crude and nasty, and I can see why people saw it as anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish. But, Israel basically... this predates Trump, but Israel does have a lot of influence on American policy in the Middle East, and it's not right. I mean, it's a small country, and it should not have this influence. And